Hi, so my name is Gail Davidge and I'm a researcher at the University of Manchester. A lot of my previous research has involved thinking about stakeholder voice and using different participatory action research frameworks as a way of supporting children and young people and also adults to be more meaningfully involved in different research spaces. And today I'm just going to give you an overview of a project I'm currently setting up that specifically aims to try and support younger audiences to access information and training on research methods. So over the last few decades, the NIHR has made a really significant investment in supporting more public and community involvement and engagement, known as PCIE, within a wide range of different health research contexts. But unfortunately, at the moment, most of the people engaging in PCIE tend to be drawn from older age groups and mostly white populations. And there remains really big challenges around making health research spaces a lot more inclusive and accessible, especially for more seldom heard individuals and groups. Excuse me. And within health research decision-making contexts, young people and especially children are also further marginalised on account of their age, and often their capacity to be more meaningfully involved as a co-producer of research knowledge is often underestimated. In the past and currently, children and young people are really reliant on adult researchers to access the knowledge and skills and training that they need to be more meaningfully involved in research. And this puts them in a rather passive position rather than being supported to be more active research partners, maybe in terms of setting the agenda in the first place or making decisions about the most appropriate research design for engaging with their peers. So a few months ago, Professor Karina Lovell and Professor Penny B asked me to have a look at a research handbook which has been written to support adults in PPIE contexts with different kinds of research training. And they asked me to see if I could find a way of adapting this for a younger audience. Now, as a researcher in the past, I've come across some good resources and I've been able to adapt those for different audiences and different age groups. But I have the advantage of being very familiar with the words in the world of research, and I've got a good idea of where to look in the first place. There seems to be really very few easily accessible research methods, information and training materials that are specifically focused at a younger audience. And I think this is partially because the existing resources that are available are written by adults for adults who are undertaking a more facilitation role or support role. And also the majority of these resources only tend to offer a brief summary of the different types of research activities that can be used. And often they're accompanied by this disclaimer which says you must offer training in research methods. Researchers also have issues too, in that they often find it difficult to locate or recruit young people with prior experience of undertaking research. So when children and young people do undertake research and get valuable experience of putting this into practice, there's currently no means of acknowledging or validating this learning process, other than by maybe obtaining a personal reference from a project investigator or something. Excuse me. Finally, equipping young people with the skills and knowledge that they need to understand the results of research could also improve their own health literacy, and this could support them to have a more active role in their own treatment and healthcare decision making. So I've been thinking about what can we as a research community do to try and help with this. The handbook's a brilliant resource and it does offer a lot of comprehensive information which has been written in an engaging manner by people who have actively been involved as PPI researchers in the past. But one of my first thoughts was that perhaps a book might not be the most accessible format for a younger audience, or even perhaps for some adults. So rather than simply adapt the book for a younger audience, the project aims to develop a series of multimedia resources which young people can access from a digital space or that could be printed off for face-to-face training contexts. So to do that, we need to be able to involve young people in the creation of the resources from the outset. So that's to ensure that their experiences and ideas and voices really drive the design process to make it as relevant and accessible and, importantly, appealing to young people as possible. Been thinking about how we might do this. So it can be quite difficult to define exactly what co-production is, but it's often defined as a process in which the public and professionals work together on an equal footing throughout every stage of the design and the delivery of the research. So in order to truly adopt a co-productive approach, it's quite tricky to state from the planning in advance, as this really should be led by the young people who are involved. But instead, I've been facilitating some kind of exploratory scoping workshops with young people who are currently involved in different kinds of PCIE work or co-research roles. And I'll come to what these scoping activities are told us shortly. But in a nutshell, what we're planning to do is recruit a small group of young people aged between 16 and 25 who already have some experience of undertaking research to form what we're going to call a Young Researchers Working Group. And this is because working with young people in this way is a really resource intensive exercise. And in order to try and ensure that they're involved and have enough time to really drive this process, we need to be quite pragmatic at the start and start off small and test out how the approach works. If it proves successful, then we can consider how to secure more funding and extend the group and obviously develop a lot more content. So we're just in the process of gaining ethical approval. And once that's granted, we can start with recruitment. And once we've got 6 to 8 people who are willing to take part, the plan is to get this group of young people together in a series of around 22-hour workshops to plan and co-produce some research information resources. Now, there's a very wide range of possible formats, but some of these might include things like podcasts or an animation or perhaps a filmed role play exercise, maybe even a TikTok style glossary of research terms, alongside an illustrated printable research training guide. And throughout the process, other young people will also be recruited to form an advisory board so that the core working group can keep testing out their ideas and get feedback on a regular basis from their peers. Also, we do know that there's very little evidence about what happens to young people as a result of being involved in research projects, how it impacts on their lives or their sense of themselves, their skills, their identities. So as part of this project, we want to address this and evaluate the young people's experiences of being involved in a co-production process. And this is so that other researchers can learn from this and ensure that when young people are involved in research, we do this in a way that benefits young people the most. So over the last few months, I've been really pleased to find that most people I've spoken to, whether they're young people or people that work in organisations that do a lot of research with children and young people, seem really keen to collaborate and see that there's a real need for something like this. So the exploratory discussions with young people were with people involved in different pieces of research at the University of Manchester, and also with a young person's advisory group at a mental health research charity, which is called the McPin Foundation. And this was to find out more really about what young people want and need. So what did they say? Well, I spoke to around 20 young people and I've asked them about the kind of training they've received and their ideas about content and formats. And they told me that the level and the type of training they've previously received varied quite a lot, and it's very much dependent on what type of PPIE work they were doing or the research projects they were involved in. And they were very much reliant on either the project investigator or the third sector organisation's provision. Other young people highlighted that they'd learned about some research methods through psychology A-level or undergraduate studies, but they said that this had been really limited, pretty dry and boring, and tended to mainly consist of very dated, dodgy psychology experiments. They were really keen to try and use this project as a way of inspiring and motivating young people to get involved in research, as they themselves would find it quite difficult to feel confident enough to speak in this space, to speak to academics or put themselves forward for any research opportunities in the first place. We thought that maybe one way of doing this might be to draw attention to more current examples of young people where their research was really making a difference or improving young people's lives. And the general consensus was that most of their peers, they just don't see research as something that's on their radar or that's relevant or for them. So this indicates maybe there's also a need for some more capacity building in terms of inspirational and motivational material, in addition to providing basic research methods guidance. So the young people had loads of ideas about what it would be useful to include, and I've only put a summary here, but there's a strong message coming across about finding ways to make the research seem relevant to young people, and underlining actually what is the point of research or PPI activities. Lots of young people also thought that we needed to keep it short and snappy, lots of video clips that explain different terminology they thought would be helpful, and also giving young people information and help with working on what kind of research design they might need and what might be most appropriate for different projects. They're also quite keen to show what actually it's really like to be a researcher, and include some videos which had existing researchers being very honest about their experiences. And they also tied this in with maybe some help with careers as well, so if they could see what the different roles and career prospects were in research. Also, for those young people very new to PPI work, young people thought it would be useful to have lots of examples of all the different ways in which people can get involved, as well as some more targeted support and training, such as reviewing research proposals or help with understanding the funding process. Again, with the format, they had loads of ideas too. And whilst they could immediately see some issues around accessibility and digital inclusion, most people tended to think that a multimedia type approach would be best and most appealing to other young people, with the caveat that opportunities for face-to-face training were made available, or printed resources too. They also underlined the need to ensure that the audio and the visual materials were presented and narrated by other young people in a much more casual, so not a stuffy academic way. And they said that that was to make it feel like it had a young person vibe, in their words. Okay, and then very quickly moving on, they thought they were really enthusiastic about acknowledging the idea for developing skills and using this as a way of contributing to their own personal development, and using it as a way of improving their employment prospects. Quite a few also pointed out that this kind of resource would be useful to access at uni or at college, and would actually support other wider academic learning, so it's not just for research involvement. They could also see how this resource might also provide good opportunities to inspire and build confidence, so that ultimately more young people felt like research was something for them. Oops. Inevitably, this kind of work is not without challenges, and I would really welcome any thoughts or advice or contacts anybody wants to share in the question and answer session in a moment. But I just thought I'd quickly share with you some of the issues that young people brought up. So one of them was a potential problem around sustaining interest and ensuring that the young people involved were able to commit sufficient time to the project. I mean, working with young people in this age group is notorious for high dropout rates due to sudden changes in work or academic commitments. So we hope to navigate this to some extent by being very explicit about the time commitment and ensuring that young people feel really valued by financially compensating them for all of their work. Some of this might be done offline. And we're also going to generate a database of other interested young people and place them on a reserve list, so that if we have anyone drop out, we've got people to take over. It's hard to get the right balance between, is it all offline working, online working? A lot of young people said that they actually prefer working online, but there are also lots of young people who don't. So we're going to try and offer a blended approach so that people have opportunities for both, but actually turn up to all. And then making the resources appealing and accessible to different age ranges is a huge problem. So we're thinking at the beginning, we're going to try and focus on the 16 to 25 age range, with a view to then later adapting these resources, perhaps if needed, for specific groups or younger age groups with different co-researchers in the future. And finally, the biggest problem, old chestnut, costs and sustainability. So whilst the ARC's able to offer a small amount of funding to trial how this kind of working will support young people to drive the provision of training resources as a process of co-production, we hope that we can find a more sustainable longer term source of funding once we've got some evidence of the impact this kind of resource might have. So that's it from me. If anyone's interested in becoming involved or has anything they'd like to say or to share, I'd love to hear from you, and I'm very happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.